Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Blue Jays Today. We're your boys. We always got something to say about the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm your host, Adam Peddle.
And I'm your host, Nicholas Playlog. And I just want to say, I am so excited for what we are about to do. If you've been watching this channel for a while, then you know whenever this man gets on the television and pulls out the baseball bat and starts breaking things down, we fangirl a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. We are talking to Joe freaking Siddall. Welcome in,
yes,
man.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. Quite the intro.
hey, man. Again, you deserve it, bro. Because every time you give a good color analysis, anytime you're breaking down a swing, I literally stop what we're doing. If we're setting up the set, I stop what we're doing. I turn up the TV. I'm like, hold on, Nick. This is good for the show. We gotta get some information here.
Well, it's a lot of fun doing that stuff. And after playing the game for so many years, especially at my position as a catcher, you see so much. But I've really taken a liking to the hitting side. I wasn't much of a hitter myself. I think I've learned 1,000 times more after my playing career than I did during it. And I spent a lot of time working with the Detroit Tigers in the batting cage. And you can imagine some of the names that I was flipping soft toss to and throwing to them. So I was a fly on the wall and listening so much. And then I've just taken into studying hitting a little bit more. And by no means would I say I'm a guru of any sort. It's not even close, but I think I've got some ideas. And when I see something, I like to voice my opinion. That's what I get paid to do.
Well, and we love listening to you, man, because again, like we were gassing you up a bit, but 99.9% of the people just do not understand the game at your level. And it is such a privilege to hear you speak. So talking about that, we'd love to pick your brain a little bit about what went down, especially today. Final Toronto Blue Jays spring training game. Thank God we are almost there, guys. We made it through the offseason. It was a tough one. But final spring training game for the Toronto Blue Jays. Kevin Gausman takes the bump. There has been a lot of speculation on whether he's going to be fully healthy, where he's at right now. I think the guy looked amazing out there. I think he racked up 7 strikeouts,
That's
3
right.
innings pitched.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on Kevin Gausman? And specifically, are you thinking that he will be able to go potentially that 4th or 5th game in the season? And if so, how many innings can we expect? What are you looking for him?
Yeah, he certainly looked great against the Pirates. I watched his bullpen session before that start. And it was at the player development facility, and there weren't too many people around. So you really get some privileged viewpoints that were literally right behind the catcher. So you could see a lot. And it was a lot of intent, a lot of purpose in his pitches. Pete Walker was into it behind him. They talked some scenarios, and you could just see that Kevin was kind of game on. And that's a good sign as a catcher for me. I'm watching going, I like this, because when you show that intent, number one, it means you feel pretty good. And he clearly did. I think the shoulder little thing is, and he even sloughed it off when I asked him early in the spring. I said, "You all right, man? Like, what's going on?" He said, "I just went a little bit too hard too early." And that's a veteran guy talking, and he's kind of kicking himself, probably because he got amped up and wanted to get rolling. And I think you got to remember going into this spring, guys, and remember last year, all of the expectations on this team, and it didn't end well again. And I think guys came in, and you hear about guys coming in with chips on their shoulder. I don't like using the cliches, but I think guys came into spring kind of all business. And then Kevin had this setback, and any star player, they've got that gene in them, and he's a competitive guy. And he was all in. I thought he looked great in that side session. It was after that I said, I'm sure he'll be fine at Pittsburgh. I'm sure he'll be fine for the start of the season. We'll see where the Blue Jays go. I think he'll be fine to start the season. That's the best news. I don't think it's going to have to be an IL thing. That's good. What game he starts? Is it game 4 in Tampa? Is it game 1 in Houston? Do they want to keep him away from the Astros? I know they roughed him up really bad early last year in Houston. Maybe does that lineup have something on him? There are a lot of reasons for the things they do, but wherever he slots in, there is going to be a pretty good reason for it. I think he'll be ready. And that's the best news, because if he wasn't going to be ready, you're talking about now, you're talking more Yariel Rodriguez, you're talking Mitch White. How are we going to handle this thing? So that's the big thing out of the way. The question now will be, how far can he go? I think he went 50 plus pitches today.
Yeah.
But as John Schneider said, I think a couple of weeks ago, I'll take 10 pitches from Kevin Gausman if that's what it means, right? So he'll be fine. I'm sure he'll be in that 70 range. The only issue is, of course, with Gausman is he strikes a lot of people out. So he can get to 70 pitches in a hurry. And he's going to need the bullpen that day, perhaps. But bottom line is, I think he will make his first start.
Yeah, well, and that's great news. We were having a lot of roster questions on the show, figuring out who would be that fifth guy. Is it going to be Mitch White or, like you said, Yariel Rodriguez? It's good to know that Kevin Gausman is looking good and can give you some sort of innings.
And just to build off of that too, like funnily enough, man, it feels like this whole off season, we're talking about the hitting. We're talking about the hitting right now being, one of the issues for this team. And it was like just in the last week, and we brought this up to Ben Nicholson-Smith. We were talking to him last week. It's like just in the last week, all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, like is the pitching the problem right now? Just because of all of this stuff going on with Gausman and the Manoah, and then, sadly the bad news here about, some of the relievers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Romano and Swanson news was, to me, pretty horrible. You've got your two back-end guys in your bullpen. It's a pretty good bullpen, but as soon as you lose your, not just one, but your two arguably best back-end bullpen arms, what happens now is everybody's got to slot forward a little bit. Now you have to thrust maybe a Jimmy Garcia, Chad Green into some closing roles, perhaps, for the first couple of weeks of the season, if that's indeed how it plays out. Not ideal. Can they do it? Yes. Have they done it before? Yes. But, Jimmy can be Jimmy at times, and Chad Green's coming off surgery. So it would have been best to have them in that 6th, 7th inning role, 8th inning role before those guys, but they're going to be thrust into that. And therefore the middle guys or the long guys maybe get thrust into a little bit more leverage too. It's a domino effect. It's not ideal, but that's why you have depth. And the more interesting or intriguing thing to me is how they handle this. I would think maybe a Nate Pearson will make the club. And the interesting one will be the next one. The next name I think that comes to everybody's mind is Zach Pop, but that's not an automatic at all for me. But then the next question is, do you delve into the Ricky Tiedemann, Yariel Rodriguez conversation? Does one of them start in the Blue Jays bullpen? So it'll be fun to find out.
Yeah, I want to jump on that. Ricky Tiedemann, I just made a video breaking it down. Obviously, it's not as simple as, let's call up Ricky Tiedemann. He stays forever on the Blue Jays. There's obviously a lot of factors with roster management when it comes to Ricky Tiedemann. Around camp, I know John Schneider said after Thursday's game that he was in the mix for a starting role. I think right now we can kind of rule that out with Bowden Francis taking the last spot. Where do you see it? Do you see a possibility where he could play a long relief bullpen this early or maybe down the line?
Well, I use the word logical. Like the logical thing would be to bring two relievers up because of the injuries to Swanson and Romano and have Rodriguez and Tiedemann, their starters, go down, start, get built up so that they can be good starters ready to go, whether it's May, June, in case something happens in the rotation. That's logical, but I don't think anybody's talking logic right now. I know I'm not. You guys aren't either after what we saw last year. Like first couple of weeks of the season, it's going to be critical. And I would think if it's going to be one of the two, I could see a Pearson making the club just because has he struggled? Yes, but he's been there, done. I think you kind of at least know maybe you put Nate in certain situations where he can prosper. But I think of the two, Ricky being younger, having the injury issue last year, being your top prospect, being a left-hander, all these things, I want to protect him and make sure he is developed properly. For me, that's in the minor leagues. That's going down and starting every 5 or 6 days, controlling his workload. He's probably not going to pitch too much more than 100 innings this year. So control that workload. And hey, if all goes well, maybe he's a piece of your bullpen in July, August, September. I think that's the smartest way to do it. With Rodriguez, he's a more veteran guy. Hasn't pitched. He didn't pitch last year, but I think signed with the Blue Jays with the understanding that he's a starter. And this might be one of those circumstances that we can kind of maybe those extenuating circumstances with all of these injuries that maybe he'd be fine with. No, you're not a starter, but this first year of his contract is the 1 year that A, he can be sent down. B, you can kind of do some kind of that transformative year. Well, maybe that calls for a pretty good veteran arm in the bullpen. Long guy, he's been stretched out. I think Mitch White makes the team also. So you have two guys with some length because you just don't know with starters at the start of the season. Now, you say he's been scuffling. Who knows if he goes 2 1/3 in his first game? So it's nice to have that insurance because you don't see a whole lot of starters going 7 innings the first time through.
Yeah, and I mean, that is just also a great point to why Romano and Eric Swanson potentially starting on the IL is just so critical because of all of this. And yeah, you're right. Like, not everybody is necessarily stretched out at this point early in the season. And I think because of all of that, especially to start, there's going to be a big emphasis on the offense to pick up a little bit of this slack, right? Because the bullpen's going to be going through it and, the starters are getting warmed up, and Kevin Gausman, we don't know necessarily how much we're going to get out of him. This offense has got to get going if we want to get off to a hot start. Now, I saw you tweet something out very recently in response to an article. It was about Daulton Varsho, and Daulton Varsho, it looks like he is trying to change up his swing a little bit. This is what the article was talking about, looking at trying to get more low line drives. And you tweeted something out in response to that. Could you expand a little bit on what it is that you're seeing from Daulton Varsho? Are you anticipating that he is going to be able to take that next step from last year, build on that offensive production? What are your thoughts on Varsho and his swing so far in spring?
Well, in reference to the article, it started talking about vertical bat angle and different things. You know, I don't claim to get too into that stuff because I'm not as familiar with it. But what I do know is the move to the baseball controls your bat path. And for Daulton, and I said it last year, and I don't see a whole lot different this spring. The setup's different. The stance is open. And he told me early in the spring, he just feels more athletic. He used to do it all the time. Sees the ball a little bit better, so he thinks it can help him with his pitch selection and maybe swing decisions, which we hear a lot of. And the big thing in camp seems to be about doing damage in your damage areas. And for him, we know that's kind of out over the plate, more middle. Where has he struggled? He struggled up and he has struggled in. And Daulton's a guy for me who has been in the league now. I think he's in that 1,600 plate appearance category, say, or around that number. And, you know, you've heard us talk on the broadcast, but Buck has alluded to it, been around this game forever. Oftentimes, hitting coaches will refer to that 1,500 plate appearance. It's kind of like 3 years in the big leagues where you come into the big leagues and you may do really well. And then the second year, the pitchers adjust. Third year, you got to adjust back. And I remember having this conversation about Teoscar, and it's kind of like after that 15, 16, 1,700 plate appearances, you kind of know a lot about a hitter.
Mm-hmm.
And Daulton got there this year. But remember, he had 27 home runs in Arizona, pretty nice season. But this year, it looked to me like, now I didn't see him a lot in Arizona, but I just looked at some of the charts and heat maps of things, and you can look at, and it looked like opposing pitchers, different league, but still opposing pitchers, went up a little bit more and challenged him in a little bit more. Now, pitchers missed their spots, of course, but he didn't do real well in those areas. And I think that's why his numbers were more what they were. I know people have made a lot of the home and road splits. I think one thing, and you'd have to really delve into who they faced at home, who they faced on the road, but I've done that before, like with pitchers. You know, when you see these splits, you try to figure out why, and you go over maybe a number of starts. Well, yeah, he was really good at home, but he also faced like Pittsburgh and Miami and, you know, some bad offenses. So those numbers can be skewed a little bit. I'm not sure if that's exactly the case with Daulton. I know he had some good road games against some marginal pitching staffs. But I think at home, too, remember that Rogers Center, we all thought it was going to be a bandbox. And you just wonder, I know if I'm a left-handed hitter last year going into Toronto, I'd be trying to hook the ball to right center field and right field because I heard all about the dimensions. Maybe he came out of his swing a little bit more. To get technical for just a second, for me, he's got to move to the baseball. Like the setup and everything's different. And again, going back to that article, that batting, where you start doesn't matter to me. Like you can start with standing on your head if you want, but it's where you get at your launch position that's most important and how you get there. And for me, I think he's got this move where he kind of goes back and it's around. It's like a longer loopy, will keep it very general to say, which means long and loopy means it's going to be very difficult to get to the ball in. It's a longer path to travel. And hitters that drift forward a little bit will have even more trouble. And Vladdy has had this issue over the past couple of years too, is that you get forward a little bit. Now you're not creating any space. When you stay behind the baseball and get a good turn here, I'm doing it on camera here. We're having a little demo Blue Jay Central right now, but it allows you to create that space to get in there. And I think Daulton's got this long path. And when you're trying to get to 94, 95 inside, it's tougher to get to. So to me, I haven't necessarily seen the adjustment to that. Yeah, he's changed his stance. Yeah, he's changed his, I think, mental approach and the philosophical approach about something early, looking for something in your damage areas. I get all that. But to me, and another name that comes to mind is Davis Schneider. Sure, you can lay off the ball up all you want. Personally, I would recommend trying to get to changing the mechanics of your swing by keeping your elbow up and flattening your path at the top of the zone to get to that high pitch. Because guess what? You're going to get lots of them. If we've seen it, you think the Tampa Bay Rays pitching staff and scouting staff haven't seen it, or the Astros or the Yankees, and we'll go on and on. Davis Schneider is going to get some elevated fastballs. But as opposed to saying, and I remember asking him this question, sorry to get off of Varsho for a minute, but when I asked that Davis Schneider about this, he told me, he's like, you got to be careful of leaving your area to get better at your weakness, because that physical change, the mechanical change you make, can hurt you in your damage area. Like, you don't want to miss your cookie in the middle of the zone. Yeah. And while I get all that, it's like, I know as a catcher, I'm attacking your weaknesses. And oftentimes it's, the old adage, do you pitch to your pitcher's strength or the hitter's weaknesses? Well, it's a combo. But if my pitcher can attack your weakness, guess where we're going? So to me, Varsho is going to have to handle the ball in. I think he's that path is real flat. It's around, it's in and out of the zone. That's why he also struggles with those changeups away, because the bat's in and out of the zone. It's very pulled. Watch when he hits the ball really hard. Good chance it's going to right field, because every once in a while, I call it squirrel and nut, right? Every once in a while, the squirrel finds that, because the timing is perfect. Can you hit home runs? Yes. Can you hit balls hard? Yes. Can you have success? Yes. But it's probably not going to be like a sustained or consistent success. And I think Daulton Varsho is so darn athletic that if he worked on his, I shouldn't say worked on it, if the swing mechanics were a little bit different, then maybe he could have more consistent results. He can still get good results, but I think he should be, for me, a guy that's hitting 20 to 25 home runs with more of a 750 OPS, not 670.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was a great break. I actually really enjoyed that.
Did you see what we just witnessed right there?
Can you see my body language when I was here, and then at the end I was doing this?
You guys get me talking hitting and baseball. I kind of get a little fired up and passionate, if you can't tell.
Dude, you make me fired up, man. It's the same feeling.
That's Joe Siddall, everybody. Shout out to Joe Siddall in the comments down below. That was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, real quick then, just to sum it up, what would you say is the quick adjustment there? Instead of long, would you say get shorter to the baseball? Would that help him out better?
You can say a lot of things, but it has to mean something. You have to know why or how you do it, right? And I think the one thing for me is, instead of getting tucked back here, if it was just here, this allows you to turn and have all this working together almost as a unit, almost think robotic, like this is all one. And if I'm turning, you're staying behind the baseball, and you're basically allowing your bat path to run into the baseball, as opposed to going to hit the baseball. Because when you go and think of hitting the baseball, trust me, I tried this for a lot of years. It didn't go well. When you try to hit the baseball, you use your hands more. And when you use your hands more, you become, I call it being handsy. When you're handsy, you're out front, the barrel head speeds up and it gets ahead of your hands. And those are your rollovers or pulls. How many times have you seen George roll a ball over to the left side? Kirky, Vladdy, they all do it because they get a little bit handsy. They get out front and that bat gets away from them. They're not connected up here.
Okay.
That was, yeah. Again,
I'm looking for that this season now. Now I know.
No, that was absolutely wild, man. I thank you for doing that, by the way. That is what I'm talking about when I talk about 99.9% of people.
It's very difficult, guys, to just watch the game and see things. I have to watch video. I slow things down. I go back and forth to try to see what the moves are. So, I mean, just watching the game, it can be kind of hard to just pick something up live speed.
For sure.
One thing that you brought up there, which I think we can all agree on, and I can figure this out watching the game. Daulton Varsho, athletic as all holy hell, right? The athleticism on this guy is absolutely ridiculous. And one thing that we have been talking about on this channel a lot, like we've just been calling it, time and time again, is we want to see an emphasis on stolen bases this year, right? It seems like the last year it really became part of the game again. You had
Arizona.
Go crazy with it, right? Acuna touched 70. And I'm not saying that the Toronto Blue Jays is going to do that, or, we even have a guy that's capable of that. But have you heard anything around camp that there is going to be an emphasis on that moving forward? And do you think that we can look for that in 2024 from this lineup?
Well, first and foremost, I think the important thing is just being smarter, because you can run all you want, but you don't just run for the sake of running. You have to, like, if you're a Daulton Varsho, clearly you can get good jumps, you can read pitchers. And Mark Budzinski, the first base coach, I'm sure he does that a lot. You're looking for tendencies from a pitcher. Like, oftentimes the pitchers aren't real smart guys. Most of them have great arms, but they're not real smart.
Quoting you on that.
When a lot of guys come set, you'll see them. Sometimes guys will come set like this, and the shoulder will just tip a little bit before they lift the leg and go home. That's just one example of many. It could be a leg move, could be something they do, and that's when I call them tendencies. So as a base runner, if you're a good base stealer, if you're fast, if you're smart, like Daulton Varsho, and he gets a tip like that, it's an easy stolen base, and your chances increase dramatically of successfully stealing that base. That's when he should be running, or that's when Bo might take a shot, or that's when George might take a shot. Those kinds of guys can probably steal more bases, but you have to be smart about it. You don't just run for the sake of running, because they didn't steal tons of bases last year, but they got caught too much.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
they did.
just, and you could say with their lineup, you don't want to be getting caught stealing. Well, it turned out with their lineup, they needed to try to create things. And that's the other thing. So when you're not swinging the bats, we see all these outs on the bases, and stealing is one of them. But you just know it's human nature, guys. As a player, you've got this team with offensive expectations, and you're not meeting them. What do you think you're going to do when you get up to the plate? What do you think you're going to do when you get on base? You're trying to do too much. And those words right there are the worst thing, anything for a baseball player, because when everybody's kind of doing their thing and you're kind of in cruise control and it's a good offense, things fire. They just go. But we saw all kinds of mistakes last year. But I think in terms of the base stealing, it's just being smarter. And if you think you can go, you go. There are so many pitchers that I can get the quick math real quick. Like when a pitcher's 1.6 to the plate, that's 1.6 seconds from the time he lifts his leg and begins his move to the plate till the time the ball enters the catcher's mitt. If he's 1.6, back in my days as I was a catcher, I'd wring my pitcher's neck for being 1.6 because I'd have no chance. So if he's 1.6, and most catchers are in that 2 neighborhood, 2.0, that's from the time it hits the catcher's mitt to get rid of it, throw it down to the second baseman or middle infielder, and they catch it. So 2 and 1.6 is 3.6, right? Easy math.
Mm-hmm.
Well, most base stealers, and I don't have a stopwatch on them, but I bet Daulton Varsho is like a 3.3, maybe 3.4, maybe. Like it's an easy stolen base. Right. So when a pitcher's 1.6, it's an easy stolen base for anybody that can run a bit. So as pitchers, we want them to slide step. We want them to abbreviate the delivery. Well, what happens when you do those things? It could alter the quality of the pitch. Like if Jose Barrios does that, he might leave that sinker middle up over the plate flat, and it could be a great pitch to hit. So he has to do things because you got to control the running. That's called controlling the running game, giving your catcher a chance. But as a base runner, those are the things you're looking for. Slow times to the plate, which is easy because most guys, it's all tracked. These guys have more information than you can imagine. And then the other one, though, the big one are the tells, the tendencies that you might see. So run smarter, and I think this team will steal more bases.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, I gotta ask you. You've been around the camp for a month now. Is there someone that you, Joe Siddall, have on your list that is going to be the breakout guy or a big performance guy that is going to kind of wow, I think, a few Blue Jays fans this season? Who do you got?
Well, you probably won't think it's a wow, but I'm going to say it's not going out there. Alejandro Kirk's back for me as a hitter.
Yes.
That's my guy. That's my guy.
The only reason I say that is because it's different. Last year, and we've told the story a million times, right? Getting to spring training late, never really ready, never really got ready. It just seemed like a battle, and he was playing catch up all season long. And when I say playing catch up, physically, yes, approach to the plate, yes. But when you as any kind of hitter, but as a good hitter like Alejandro, when you're a good hitter and you're not right, could be a knee you tweaked, could be an ankle, could be an elbow, could be something altering your swing. Or in his case, just never got in sync with his body and with his swing. You try to create. Once again, you try to do too much. There's that term again, right? And when you do too much as a hitter, you start cheating. I don't think he felt like he could get to a fastball, so he started cheating. And you see him getting out there out front, really drifting forward or really spinning off the ball because I think he felt to get to a decent fastball middle lane, he had to cheat a little bit. He had to get the barrel out there early. Well, you start doing that stuff. I see that in a second as a catcher, and now we're going to spin you away, and they alter how you pitch to. So that's why I think you saw a lot of the pulled ground balls, and that's why you do anyway. But for a hitter like that, especially that's really fighting it, he's scuffling. Other teams knew exactly what he was going through, so they just kept hammering him, and he played right into it because he couldn't physically probably make the adjustment because he wasn't in a good enough physical state, strength-wise and everything else, to get that swing right. It goes back to the Vladdy conversation for last couple of years, right? To me, your physical shape is important as a hitter because you need to be strong. Like making a good, strong move to the baseball takes core strength. You have to load up in that back hip. There are a lot of things going on that require dynamic strength. So for Alejandro, I just don't think it was there last year. And he had to try to do too much. And when you do that, you come out of your swing. Well, I see a guy now that looks ready, looks strong. And the reason I say it is because the move to the baseball is more controlled, I think. This spring, I've seen a lot of that old Alejandro. It's a simple swing, right? He gets a good stretch back here, but he's not drifting out forward. It's just out there, and boom, he's staying behind the baseball much better.
Well, to your point about trying to do too much, I mean, one thing that we picked up on a lot last year, and, Alejandro Kirk is my guy, my favorite Toronto Blue Jays player. I love this guy. And when he came up, in those first few seasons, then when he became an all-star, that guy might have had the best approach at the dish, one of them that I've ever seen.
Great
Right?
eye.
Yeah, like the eyeballs, the way that he just handled his at-bats, magical. And it felt like last year, and maybe it was because he was trying to do too much, it just felt like last year, like that approach, especially as the season went on, just started to break down,
When you speed things up as a hitter, your body gets going because you feel like you have to do more. You're not going to see the ball as well. You're not picking up spin as well. So you're not going to make as good of decisions, and you might expand a little bit more. So there are so many bad things that can happen that I think happened to him. And when he is under control, like any hitter, he is seeing the ball better. One thing he does so well, you mentioned the knowledge of the strike zone. And because of that, hitters like that, and I think it's partially a gift. Some guys just see the ball better, know the zone better, but it's also partially your move to the baseball. And like I said, if you're loading up and falling forward and moving and your head's flying, you're probably not going to see the baseball as good as the guy that's more under control and staying behind the ball. So I think Alejandro does both of those things. He's probably innately very good at picking up the baseball and knowing the zone, but then his body's in a position when he's right that he sees it really well. When you draw walks the way he does, it's kind of like the Biggio thing of old, right? When you could draw walks, I mean, man, if I drew walks like that, I don't want to say I'd never slump, but those guys shouldn't slump. So with his hitting ability, Kirk, and the way he sees the ball and draws his walks, that's a valuable combination. I mean, you're talking about a guy that can walk more than strike out. That's unbelievable at the major league level, especially.
Yeah, I mean, for Kirk, I think that's a key for this Blue Jays lineup to really get clicking. We saw 2022 All-Star Kirk. He was batting in the 4th spot for a lot of the time.
And he doesn't have to be a big power guy. He's not necessarily a guy that's going to hit 25, 30 home runs. He's going to be a really good singles, doubles hitter. And I think the Blue Jays would like to see a lot more of those doubles this year than the ground ball double plays, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you add in Justin Turner in the 4th spot, Kirk 5'6", depending on lefty righty, splitting up the lineup a little bit there. He could be in that spot. I think that's a great way. If we can get Kirk back, that's a key for that Blue Jays lineup to have success. I wanted to know what Joe Siddall's key to the Blue Jays team overall, key to success this year, to have them go back to the playoffs, to have a good, maybe a deeper run, maybe win a game, maybe win a playoff series.
Gee, wouldn't that be
wonderful?
Man?
That would be wonderful. I think we all would agree upon that. What is the key to success for the Blue Jays this year?
Well, the simple key is they got to hit better, but I think for me, it's the big boys. You guys have heard me say it a million times. I think your best players have to be your best players. And that starts right at the top with George Springer. He's not getting younger. The numbers went down again last year, and I don't put a whole lot of stock into spring training. I know a lot of guys have had great springs, but I just don't buy into that stuff. The wind's flying down here. You're facing minor league pitchers half the time. For a lot of reasons, I just don't like it. Everything starts fresh on Thursday. All the numbers are going to be 0, and that's what's beautiful because the real season is starting. George has to be better, man. At that leadoff spot, that's a big miss the way he was down offensively last year. And then whatever they do with Vladdy's the number one. I mean, if Vladdy's MVP 950 OPS guy right away, I'd say this offense is going to be great. Okay. Like that to me, it's if there's one person, it's him. But what I like to see is incremental improvements from George this year, from Vladdy this year, and from Kirk. Those are the 3 because those are the 3 big guys near the top of the lineup. Would contributions from some others help? Yeah, but once I get down there, hey, anything a Varsho or a Jansen or a Biggio can do for me, that's great. That's gravy. But your big boys need to be your big boys. And this is a team that was a top 5 offense in baseball a couple of years ago. But that's with George Springer being George Springer, Vladdy being much better, and Kirk being much better. And they need those guys all to be much better if this offense is going to go. And you've mentioned the pitching already. You might have to hit a little bit more than you even thought now if you're going to be dealing with pitching issues.
Well, I'll tell you, we are very aligned with you because we've said it time and time again on this channel. When Vladdy goes, the Blue Jays go. And Vladdy, he was kind of going last year, but just not at the level that I think that we need him to if they're gonna go deep.
He's a funny one, right? I mean, not a funny one, but this is an MVP caliber guy. We've seen it. And yeah, you could talk about minor league parks and everything. I just thought he was different that year. The swing was different. as good as his numbers are this spring, guys, I'm probably in the minority here, but I think he's fighting it right now.
Time for a quick shout out to Betway. Betway is the best place to make all of your sports bets on all of your favorite teams. Betway is also in collaboration with iGaming Ontario. Must be 19 years older to participate. And guys, please bet responsibly. Now, back to the content.
He's searching right now. Like, he had a few hits the other day, didn't hit anything real hard, but I saw him in the cage yesterday. I saw him take batting practice on the field at Player Development Complex. And I'm kind of watching a lot of things. And again, I'm kind of watching his hands, watching his move the ball. And you see guys' reactions, but that's what that big difference is watching in person down here in Florida. You can see so many things. And he's fighting things. Like, we know that little check step he's got and the hands come down. That was all the timing nightmare last year. He had all kinds of issues about it. I've talked about it. I know a lot of people, and he talked about it. The adjustment I'm seeing this year is he's got that check step, and the hands that start so high, they're staying a little higher, which is good. It's an adjustment, but I'm still not necessarily seeing the next move that has to be the move to the baseball. So again, you can do whatever you want all up here, but the bottom of when he was right, when he was great, it was home. And when I do that, I mean, like, boom, like almost cocking that bat forward here so that it could turn back and bam. How do you think he got to, what was it, 96, 98 inside on Garrett Cole a couple years ago?
Yes.
And I know I'm turning back the clock, but that's how you get to that stuff. And that's when I think Vladdy was at his best. And I think he can do it because he has got the most ridiculous talent of anybody. Well, not anybody I've ever seen, because I threw a lot of batting practice to Miguel Cabrera in Detroit. That has to be probably number one. But he kind of reminds me of that sort of thing. So if he can figure this move out again, which right now it still looks a little quirky to me, despite his success down here. But let's just follow it as the season starts here and see if he can figure something out. Right now, to me, it's still not the Vladdy I'm looking for.
Yeah, I was hoping to get the Vladdy who, you've talked about a bunch on Sportsnet, to get around to the fastball, and it felt like last year he was always trying to catch up, right? So
you called it. Like, how many? And let's keep watching him. You guys know you're watching TV probably just like I'm watching the game, and you're seeing guys attacking with the fastball. Why do you think they're doing it? Because he's not getting to it. Why isn't he getting into it? Well, some of the things we talked about, we won't reiterate it, but the moves to the baseball, he's not getting to those fastballs. I think the way he was going, and even right now, I'm saying if you throw him a little slider or cutter out over, you're doing him the biggest favor in the world.
Yeah,
even a changeup, because it's off speed. And until he proves to me that he can get to the heater again, I'd be pounding him. Guess who they're starting with? The Tampa Bay Rays. Well, they're pretty good. Just in case you didn't know, they're pretty good at pitching and they're pretty good at scouting. And we'll see. It'll tell you a lot. Watch the games and watch how opposing pitchers pitch hitters. And that tells you a lot, because whatever I think or I believe, it can be confirmed with the way the Rays attack certain hitters. Or I can say, oh, wow, I was wrong. I thought they were going to do this. They might throw him a bunch of sliders because, well, obviously sliders away to righties, righty. That's good pitch too. But it'll be interesting to see how they attack him. But I bet he's going to see some heaters until he shows he can hit it.
Well, like you said, it all starts fresh at 0 on Thursday. Joe, this has been such a pleasure, man. Just watching you do your thing right here and break everything down, like, that's absolutely awesome. I just want to say, like, we appreciate you taking the time, coming here and breaking down some ball with us, man.
It's my pleasure, guys. Keep it up, and it's always fun talking baseball.
Well, Joe, we'll be looking forward to seeing you on Sportsnet this Thursday, man. Take care. All right, guys, that was Joe Siddall. Absolute pleasure. As you guys know, if you're OGs here, we love him. We love his analysis. So big shout out once again to Joe Siddall. What a pleasure.
That Varsho breakdown was messed up,
dude. I'm going to clip that.
That's crazy. Yeah.
I'm going to try clip it, but it was just so in-depth. I don't know how.
Yeah, guys, please make sure to like, subscribe, comment your thoughts down below. Also, $3 a month, become a Patreon member. Shout out and thank you to all of our current Patreon members and our YouTube members too. And folks, this Thursday, we're going to be live as well. So stay tuned for that.
Guys, thank you so much for watching.
And as always, go Jays, go!